Okay, so MYOB Advanced Payroll for end of financial year. I think the first thing we need to really just sort of touch upon is just making sure we're aware of etiquette. Raise your hand if you've got something to ask or send something in the chat box. I've got Morgan assisting me with any questions, and I'll go about answering them as we go along if they're pertinent to what we're talking about at the moment. Otherwise, we'll cover it at the end when we do questions and answers. Also, if you could turn off your cameras, Sheralta. And yeah, definitely raise your hand, and we'll try and keep you all covered with any queries that you have along the way. So there's your controls for your teams there in that picture. So today we're going to have a bit of a chat about what's coming with the ATO updates. We'll also have a look at reportable fringe benefits tax, and also look at reconciling your payroll. And that's really also something that you should be looking at doing month to month as well. So not just for end of financial year, but as you go along month to month, making sure that, number one, people aren't actually doing any postings directly into your payroll accounts, and also that everything is actually coming across from payroll that you actually want and going into the right slots for yourselves. Single touch payroll, we'll go into that and have a look at what you need to do for finalising your actual payroll and putting up the income statements to the ATO for your staff to grab down. Okay, so the ATO this year, what have they got in store for us? Well, there is the actual increase in the super guarantee up to 10%. That's going to happen automatically for you for your first pay run within July. And you'll have across, if you're doing a pay back in the previous financial year, it'll still show as 9.5%. And if you actually do a pay run dated in July itself, it will use the 10% for you automatically. There'll be also changes, of course, to your threshold for your max super, and that will update automatically as well. I think it's going up to 58,000 per quarter income. Any changes to the tax tables will be updated. Any of the changes to any of the HECS or study loans, they'll be adjusted automatically. So everything should be in place for you for that first pay run. Okay, so when you're looking at what you need to be looking at for the end of financial year, you're going to check to make sure that all your employee and company details are correct. If you've got reportable fringe benefits that you need to show, whether you're exempt or not exempt, you'll need to get those in place, and reconciling your payroll, of course, and then sending that STP finalisation. Okay. Checking your employee info, really about having the right start date for your employee, making sure that you've got individual non-business set. And I think we've already got that all in place pretty much because you've been doing the actual STP submissions as well. And the system would have been giving you warnings with regards to info for your addresses and phone numbers and that sort of thing. The other thing that might be worthwhile doing is just going through the pay item liabilities and just going through and checking that you've actually got your ATO categories set correctly, so that things that are meant to be included in gross payments, including allowances, are all marked correctly. If you've got allowances which need to be shown separately, they're also tagged. And what you can do is you can make those changes in that ATO category box, and when you do that update pay history as in the screenshot, it will automatically backtrack and update your old transactions to be the right category. So with your last submission, all that information should be as required. If you are making changes to that sort of area, then I do recommend that you send an update submission first to ensure that the information that you've got is correctly in place. And we can take a look at that area in a moment. And I might just do that now. I might just bring up advanced and we'll have a quick look at those liabilities. I've got one here prepared earlier. So it's really coming in here to these pay item liabilities. And you can say, look, this payroll here hasn't got STP turned on because, of course, it's a demo company. But this is your ATO category here to the right, and you've got your drop downs to make the selections as required. If you're uncertain of which of those categories you need to pick, especially these allowances, really, you're going to need to refer to the ATO website or your accountant. And any other section, remember you've got your RESC payments option for your salary sacrifice super. And that's important as well, so that you're reporting the correct figures in the right area for your superannuation. Once you've done those selections, then here under actions, you've got this update pay history, and that will go away and make the updates to the transactions. When you do this, please don't have a pay run actually open. I do this when there's no pay runs actually open. The other thing you might as well also double check is that you've got your work cover liability selected correctly. If you've got payroll tax selected correctly as to what is and what is not included in payroll tax, and your payroll tax categories as well. And that will also backwards update the transactions for you for payroll tax. The only area that does not actually get backwards impacted is the actual employee's location jurisdiction for payroll tax. Right, that is a transaction by transaction thing. Hate that word. And because some employees may move location as to where they fall into for payroll tax. And if you've got more questions about payroll tax, then by all means send a query to our support department and we'll help you with checking through it, that everything's working and that you are able to get the reports out that you require for payroll tax. Okay, now the next area that I want to cover is looking at fringe benefits. And this includes also if you're a not-for-profit and you've got employees that are sacrificing for rent, for health, for childcare and all that sort of area as well, because all of it actually is required to be reported, even if your company or the employee is exempt or not exempt. It's just a matter of using the appropriate pay item for that purpose. Key things for advanced is that you actually have the pay items set up, and we'll look at those in a second. It's, I think, better to set up a separate pay group for just fringe benefits, and then you can just add the people to those pay groups that are going to be liable for fringe benefits with the appropriate pay items associated with it as a standard pay. You'll create a pay run. That pay run will actually be April to March, and the physical payment date actually has to be a current date, because remember, everything that you process within advance does go through as an STP submission. So this will have to also go through as a current date. And the only reason I put June date there is just to remind us that so many people will do it as a June date. If you actually have employees that have already left and you haven't done the reporting yet, you will need to actually backdate those prior to their actual departure from your company. All right, so here's the pay items. And there's 4 ways of setting it up. And I'm not going to read them out because I'll get tongue-tied, but you can see that you can decide whether you're going to gross up your figures or not gross up your figures. I'm into 1-for-1, but it really is a matter of how you receive those numbers from your accountant if they are providing it for you, and whether it's an exempt entry or a non-exempt entry. And most cases, we should, if you've mentioned to us that you are doing fringe benefits, we would have set these up somewhere along the line for you, more than likely during the actual implementation of your software. Okay, so payroll group setup, and we can have a look at this. So if I come across into my payroll, we will go and have a look at pay groups, which is, and yes, I do have problems finding things like everybody else. So pay groups. So here's my fringe benefits one that I set up. I haven't bothered to put any hours per year or anything like that because it's not relevant for what we're doing. I've got my pay frequency set as annual. And what I did also was I actually set my dates up like last year's dates. So when I go to create the next fringe benefits tax pay run, it's just going to roll on 12 months from the dates I've got. And I've got standard pay set up for 3 of my employees associated with that pay group. So then if we actually come to people, manage pays, I've got other pay runs open, but because this is a pay run that is not of the same group, I can now open another one. And here's my dates. Now, I'll make that as today. And I'll go into it. And you're used to doing pay runs, putting in your number. And you've got to remember also, of course, that when you are doing this, if you're putting an amount in under the limit, under the threshold, it's not going to show up as a transaction for you. So it's just a matter of checking with the ATO what the current threshold is for these transactions. And then come back to the pay run, process, and complete it. And of course, there's not going to be any financial transaction that's going to be created with this. So it's telling you no pay runs. All right, so that's now ready. Now, that will have actually submitted also to the ATO. And within the submissions, you would see under the Fringe Benefits tab, I'll show you some screenshots because that's the only way I'm going to be able to do it for you. Okay, so here's our pay run that we've created. Okay. Let's go back. Yeah, I don't have one to show you. All right, so there is a Fringe Benefits area that it will show on the tab for the amounts that you've submitted that are within the threshold range. Now, any questions up to this point? All right, so reconciling your payroll. So with this, we're going to look at checking your postings, making sure that the leave entitlements and provisions have been done, and also that your super is going to the right places and that you're reporting the super as it needs to be. Things to remember with reconciling is that you've got transactions within the payroll and that are posting to the GL, and also that you've got the data in the payroll and that both need to be correct and as you expect them to be. You should, of course, also have a look at, if you've got work cover that you've been provisioning, leave entitlements if that you've actually been provisioning and matching. Same with superannuation, that you've actually paid out what you expect, what you had been collecting, and payroll tax you've reported appropriately. I think really, if you're going through, you're going to be actually running some reports and comparing your results, investigating discrepancies for significant entries, doing any correcting entries for any variances, and making sure that you've actually adjusted your payroll setup if it's required for the future. Now, I do like to talk about this, and this gets quite complex if people haven't got their wave thoughts the right way, and that is the relationships between the payroll, pay items, and how it gets to the general ledger. And you've got your pay items all have a general ledger purpose attached to them. That is a collective grouping of that nature of pay item. Each of those general ledger purpose codes are then replicated in posting classes, and depending on the posting class, you may have a variation on general ledger codes there and variation of sub-accounts. So that combination of the pay item, the posting class, and the actual account selected gets you the link through to the general ledger. Your employees are then attached to a posting class. And in general, you've got a posting class and a person, departmentalized branch, company, sub-accounts to do your department. So there's various combinations. I know we've got clients which have got 100 or so different posting classes because of what locations and what area they work in within each of those locations. So it can get very complex or it can get very simple. If I need to go more deeply into that area and just go over that for you, we can do that one-on-one. If you've got any general questions that you might feel that are going to be interesting for other clients that we've got here in this session, then by all means, I'll raise them and we'll talk about it in more depth. What you're actually going to do is look at, for reconciling, you're going to look at various reports and match them back to the general ledger. Now, as we know, when we run a payroll, the amount of wages that you're actually processing is actually split up into various different areas that it's posting within the general ledger. So looking at something like gross wages doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to hit those accounts. One account is going to hit a number of different accounts. So we have to use the tools that are available to us as best we can to actually be able to have a look at that information. So what we did was, and I expect that everybody has access to this area, is that we expanded on what MYOB provided us so that we could look at the actual postings that are occurring. So if I take you into a pay run, you'll see that if we look at this pay run, that we have a general ledger code that we can see on this screen, and we can see the sub-accounts associated with it. And that'll come from this person's posting class. So we can see that already salaries and wages, because of the actual general ledger purpose and the actual posting class selected for the employee, it's brought through information here for us. So what we're going to do is use this information to display in a pivot so that we can then look at our general ledger and get some sort of reconciliation correlation for reconciliation. All right, let's have a go at that. So we have pay activity detail data. This is the flat data portion of our, let's do, right, I'll go to May. Yep. Okay, so this is the flat data that we have pulled together that will assist us with what we're doing with the reconciling. And it's like taking an Excel spreadsheet. Once we've actually generated our data and our range, and you might just do it for 12 months to start with, and then if you're finding variances, start breaking down your date ranges to try and identify where you've got a variation. And then we've got pivots. Now you might have one pivot that does both of these or two separate pivots like I've got it here. You'll probably find that in more recent versions, we will have had to split these pivots out so that they work as we expect or would want them to work. So I'm going to go into this general ledger one, and it's brought my data. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out my name, and this is very similar to what Excel would produce as a pivot for you, but I find this simpler to use. You can see that you've got your GL codes across the top. I'll just open that up a bit. GL codes across the top and pay items down the side. Now what I can do is I can actually bring in branch. See what have I got with these? I've got two. It's only one branch. Okay. And what this does then is branch is going to be your different locations. Where's my sub-accounts? And then I can actually bring in sub-accounts. Of course, I mucked it up. There it is. I want to bring it over here. Okay, and because this company only uses one branch for doing pays, I'm going to take branch out and just concentrate on sub-accounts. So what I've got now is I've got general ledger and split by sub-account. So straight away, I can now go to my salary and wages account and have a look at these totals, sub-account by sub-account, and check that it actually matches as I want to have it match. So I can come across to finance, and I'll leave that tab open and come to my details. And I'm looking at May, salaries and wages. Okay, so in this month, my turnover was 83,600 odd, and I've got 83,600 odd here. I can then go for my sub accounts, which I'll need to just grab because I don't know them. ACT. Okay, got rid of it. Okay, so here now for ACT, for the month of, for April to May, or May. I've got 20,000 here, and I've got 20,000 here. So I'm able to match these things together. Now, one key thing to look at with this is that what you see here in this annual leave provision account is actually leave taken, not what is actually within the GL account. To actually get that get the number for the actual leave provision, you would have to take your leave taken amount from your pivot and -1 from the other to get the total within that provision account. The leave expense account on what will show up here will show the value of your actual amount that you provided, because that's the first account that is hit when you're doing a payroll journal. And the provision account is for the showing here as the leave taken, because that's where the money is actually allocated from to pay your employee for the leave that they're going to be paid for their annual leave. So this is not a true full replication of journals, but it's allowing you to actually take information from the pay run and apply it to the actual journals themselves. Okay, I know that was quite complex for some people. Do we have any questions? And I have tried to spend a fair bit of time with each of the clients, with each of you clients, each of you trying to explain this one-on-one in the past. So, all right, let's keep going. So that is doing the comparison between your general ledger and your payroll. The other area that may impact your actual journals balancing is if you actually have other than payroll entries within the general ledger. So what you can see here is you've got this module column. This module column is really within, I'm in the general ledger here, about where the transaction came from. Payroll journals are blank, but if there's been a direct journal to that account, it will show up as GL. So I can click on this GL and have a look and see if there's been any direct postings to cause an imbalance within the payroll and my financials. If I haven't seen anything here, then it could be that it's something that it's like an unposted journal that hasn't actually come all the way through to the financials that is causing the imbalance. So those areas are going to be over here in the finance area, and we can see that you've got release transactions and post transactions. Payroll will normally sit here in the post transactions area, and in this case, this is not to do with payroll. So this journal here waiting is not going to have an impact. Okay. Let us see what's next that we want to talk about. Okay. What I do want to cover quickly, and it's something that has actually been coming up a fair bit, is how we are able to make alterations to past pay runs. Now, there are two ways that you can make alterations to your pay run that has occurred in the past, recent past or long time past. If it's a pay run that is directly just been done, then you can actually do a reversal of it. I'm just going to see what I can pick up this commission one here. All right, there has been no other pay run since this commission pay run. With this, I can actually do a reversal, and that is going to actually do a journal entry for wages payable and the bank as well. Though you have to be very cautious when you're doing this, because if you've already paid the staff, you do not want to be reversing anything. You want to somehow make a correction to it, either paying them more money in another pay run or doing a deduction in a future pay run. So you've got to be careful of the impact that this is going to have. But if you've noticed something before you've sent it to the bank, this is really handy, because this will directly reverse this particular pay run and also prepare a replacement pay run for you to make the changes on, and you can make financial changes. So that's that. Now, if the actual pay run was in the past and it's not the most recent pay run, then you have the opportunity to do a pay adjustment. Now, and they will show in a nature like this. This is the minus component. This is the replication of it. The key thing with adjust pay is that it does not do the journal entry for the bank. So it will not actually reverse the entry that goes from wages payable to the bank for this adjustment reversal, nor for this replacement journal. So the idea is, and this is my rules always, adjust pay should never be associated with any financial change to the employee. So you don't want to be changing the net payment to that employee. Otherwise, it's going to cause an out of balance in your general ledger and have money hanging around, $65,000 sometimes, hanging around because a pay run was actually adjusted and either never cancelled when this pay run was done, or the amount is actually being changed for the replacement pay run. So, and then there's a huge amount of reconciliation that's required to try and identify and fix those pay runs. So, adjustment pay runs. As soon as you highlight an employee, you have then the opportunity to do this adjust pays. It is going to automatically throw a reversing entry in, and it's going to be a separate minus pay. And you don't want to change this transaction date or this period because you want that minus to occur in the same period as the original. There is no, I've got a pay run open. Okay, so it doesn't let you do this if there's a pay run physically open. All right, so if that's the case, you have to decide whether you're actually going to come into the pay run and cancel it or process it. And I'm just going to cancel it, get rid of it. I don't want it. Okay, that's gone. And manage pays. I'll just pick something up from here. I'll do this one. Pick my employee, adjust pay. Don't want to change my date. I also don't want to change my date for the actual pay here, but what I do want to do here is I'm going to go G, if I can spell, oh, call it something. Don't change your dates, save it, go in here. Now, there is no issue with you changing the nature of how the actual gross income is going to be divided up. There is no issue with changing how you're doing super. Anything which is not going to have an impact on the actual net, you can do. And sometimes it will be people who went on leave but actually were going to go on leave and didn't end up going on leave, or vice versa. Look, to me, if somebody didn't go on leave, did go on leave and they didn't tell you about it, just pick up that leave entry in your next pay run, because the leave can be dated whatever dates you want when it was taken. But if they didn't physically take the leave, by all means, come in here and make the change. If you've got leave loading actually being done, then you will have to actually deal with getting back the leave loading as a deduction in the next pay run, not removing it from this adjustment. So make your change, save it, and process it. So no journal entries are done for pays, but the actual physical expenses and provisions will be taken care of. And again, it reminds you there's nothing being done. So to have a look at now, the actual pay runs that have been created out of it, you can have a look at manage pays and all. And you can see where I picked up the pay run. I've got a yes here for the adjustment. I think it was 47. And up the top, here's my automatic reversal. And the exact next number after it is the actual correcting entry. Okay, so any issues, talk to me if you find this has been happening in the past, and we'll try and correct it for you. Okay, what's next on my list? Any questions about that? Don't forget, if you've got a question that you just want to type in along the way, just put it in your chat, and that's your little speaker box at in your Teams bar. All right, now leave. Another area that can get distorted with postings. Within advanced, it was quite a while ago, there is this auto adjust provisioned entitlement amount tick box. What this does within the entitlement is that it will keep track and keep the leave entitlement provision amount within payroll in line with what is being posted to the general ledger if there is a change of rate, an employee's pay rate change. So if somebody gets a wage increase, on the next pay run, there'll be the actual provision journal that will be posted, plus there'll be an adjustment entry as well, which will be revaluing all the leave that is physically for that person it has got sitting there as an entitlement, revalue it to the new rate. If this is not ticked, then that journal won't happen. And when you start actually looking at reconciling what you physically got as a value, not physically, what you have in your reporting and payroll area as a expected provision amount won't match what's actually in the general ledger. The other thing that may actually impact on what's in the general ledger being different is that there's been direct postings, and also that you are not posting at all your provision. So things like personal leave, sick leave, most likely you're not actually putting provision journals in for. So of course you're not going to have a balance, or you might have an opening balance that then it was turned off after that and not used anymore. To actually see how you're actually progressing with your leave provision value, we actually wrote a report called Entitlement Valuation, because the way that Advanced actually processes its transactions and the way that MYOB have decided to actually report on those transactions do not actually reflect how we in the accounting world actually post those transactions into financials. So there will be a probable discrepancy between what you see in the MYOB provision values versus what's physically in the GL because of dates. So what I actually mean by that is when you've got a pay run open, you will see that you have, doesn't show it here. Let me just, it's not showing it. Okay, in this area, there is a transaction date and there's a physical pay date. And the transaction date is when you will have actually opened the pay. The physical pay date is when you're actually doing the payment, and so that is when the postings will go to the GL. When you do things like leave adjustments, the transaction date is what is used for the posting date, and there is no physical pay date generated at all. What we did was actually then do some thinking of how we can actually make it reflect the general ledger. So we actually said, okay, look at the payment date, but if it doesn't exist, use the transaction date. And that seems to have worked pretty well. So what I can do with this report is actually then say, okay, what was the value of my leave as at the 31st of May, and be able to compare that back to the general ledger. So I can take this report and look at it. So what I'm expecting is annual leave provision value of 192,000. Let's have a look. How is this going? Remember to take out the sub account. Okay. Well, wait a minute. Oh, period. Yeah, okay. 81. Okay, my postings are not good. I didn't expect them to be good, so now I would start investigating what's going on with that, and it could be there was no opening balance journal put in to start with. Yep, doesn't match. So I would now actually have to do some investigation as to what's going on with that. But the idea of having a look at the actual report, looking at the amount that's sitting there in provision and matching it back to your general ledger. Now, if you find that the balance of the actual employee is not the right balance for the leave, then you have the opportunity to actually do adjustments. These adjustments recently came in a different form to what we had in the beginning, and this particular these adjustments actually now keep track of the entries that you're doing. You can report on them, view them, whatever you want to do with them. And as long as that employee has that entitlement on their standard pay, you can come in and add an accrual or an earning, do a minus or a plus, hours or whatever range you have here for set for your entitlement, and decide whether you're going to post it to the general ledger as a variance or not. So if you're using annual leave and you're not posting to the GL, then you'd have this unticked. If you are doing journals, then you have it ticked until you take, and you can pick the date you want to actually put it to. So while you've got it sitting on hold, nothing's going to happen. So you can actually sit here and just do an adjustment until you've finished everything. And then you can come and have a look at your adjustment list, run through them, check that you're doing the right thing, and then you can actually sit and update them automatically. So if people have moved from one annual leave group to another annual leave group, what you'll have is you'll have two sets of adjustments, one for the old annual leave as a minus and one for the new annual leave entitlement as a plus to transfer the actual leave across. Oh, okay. So I had the wrong period selected. Okay. Thanks, Helen. And I think hopefully you got the idea, though. If you mark up your dates, you're going to certainly not match. So here we go. We've done our adjustments. So from here, I can untick it and I can release it one by one if I want to as well. So this one will have done a journal entry as well to the GL. All right, let's have a look, see where we're up to. Okay, so I've just spoken here about doing the entries plus minuses. There is a type under there which is opening balance. Opening balance can only be used once. which will be for opening balances. From that point on, you will have to do balance adjustments, even if you are making a change to what was put in with the type of opening balance. Super, you're going to, usually you will have an expense account and a provision account. The journal's going to post to the expense account and then do a background journal across to provision. And then when you are actually processing your super to your clearinghouse, it will be reducing the amount in that provision account for what it is that you want to pay. So if you have normal salary sacrifice, you're going to have that going to the expense account. If you've got salary sacrifice, it's going to go to the actual super payable GL account, because it's the employee's money, not the business's money, and super guarantee will be linked to the actual super expense account within the general ledger purpose area. To have a look at your super, again, you can use your pivot for your pay activity details. You've got the super batch details and you've got the general ledger summary area. And there is an expectation that, again, with your reconciling of your super, you've actually been keeping track of what's been going into the actual super for your period that you're paying, and that what you're paying out to your actual clearinghouse is going to net off that previous period's collective entries. Okay, any questions to this point? Okay, so finalizing your STP. You're going to finish off your pay events and send them to the ATO. You're going to reconcile your payroll, and then do your FBT and everything else, and then you'll send that event to the ATO. To actually send a finalization, you can send a finalization for whatever period that exists within the system to the ATO. So you can actually make more than one submission for a financial year, meaning that you've had to make some adjustments to somebody's pay after you've sent the first one. And that is just a matter of picking that year that you want to send the submission for, selecting the employees that changes have been made to, and submitting it again. And once you've submitted it, then you will actually have that go to the portal for the business, and also go to the MyGov portal for your employees. And then that should be available once finalizations have been set for them to do their tax returns. All right, now let me just have a quick chat here. Okay, with your finalizations, you have the general area, which is looking at what submissions have actually been sent in the past, and that allows you to actually look in detail, information, totals, allowances and deductions. Your fringe benefits tax will actually show up here, exempt and not exempt. Any ETP terminations, and also any just general details about the employee, and also if there's been tax file declarations sent through the system. Right. And this information can be exported to Excel. I don't think we've got any fake. No, we don't have any fake submissions. Okay. This report here is a flat report that we've written, which allows you to view most of the information that's in the submission. Again, this will only give you information if there's been a submission itself done. So I expect nothing to come up. Nothing to come up. Update submission, something that's worthwhile to actually send to the ATO if you've been doing adjustments backwards and forwards, backdating pays, doing adjustments, because this update submission will actually then overtake and override any year-to-date balances that have gone through for your employees up to that point, and refresh it all at their website. So once you've done your fringe benefits tax and that sort of thing, you can actually send one of these and check that it's all as it needs to be in the right categories to make sure that everything is as you require it. Then once you've actually done that, then you have the opportunity to actually do your actual finalization. And all of these sections, you can actually export the details that have gone out. You get the opportunity with this finalization to also include inactive employees, which would then pull in staff that have been previously terminated. Okay, the actual submission is, what happens is I can't do more than show you the screens because we can't turn on single touch here. There's a year that you can select, which will be the end of June 2021. All the employees are listed down in front of you one by one, and then you just click on Submit Finalization Event. So if I come back to my screenshot here, this one shows a little bit more. The actual finalization, when we have a look at the menu, you can see here, this is single touch payroll. This is, you know, you might be like that. I've expanded it and it's sitting here. And we do have, there are documents that that MYOB actually produced, which takes you through the steps as well, which we should end up sending out to everybody. There's also help files within the system, which I'll show you in a moment. So, and we're also available on the phone if you actually need assistance. And it is as simple as what it looks. Okay, so my disclaimer. We are a software company. We are not accountants and giving you, well, we may be, but we're not got our accounting hats on. So we're not able to provide you with any accounting advice. So please check with your accountants, tax agents, BAS agents to clarify anything if you're uncertain with something which is going to be accounting related. Okay, so our payroll team has grown. You know, Glenda and I have been hanging around for a while, but we've also got Joanne and Blair. They've come from other providers, so they actually came along having quite a bit of experience in advanced and payroll. Tarek is also with us, and he's been with us for a couple of years. So we're here to help you with your payroll queries, and of course any advanced business queries as well along the way, but we'll concentrate on payroll. So by all means, send us a support request and say hello if you haven't spoken to any of these particular people. Other areas of help we have is actually the actual education centre. Now, take down this link because this link is not available out of advanced. Right, so you can see here that, oh, sorry, that's the help link. Yeah, no, that's the education centre, yes. So that's what you end up seeing what is actually at the bottom of this screen. And down the bottom of knowledge base, what you've actually got is a new area, which is actually going to the knowledge bases for financials and for payroll. So that will actually take you to no, I didn't. Okay. Okay. So that'll take you into an area where there's a lot of information available. Plus, you've got white papers, and there's a lot of information there, step-by-step instructions as well. The other area also is help. So I've clicked on the question mark at the top of the screen. And slowly I will update, or we're going to be updating everybody's help files to be more up to date with the payroll area, because I've done some work in that area to actually bring it more relevant for now. We have areas here with end of month and end of year, which also takes you about finalisation. There is not much to do there. Reportable fringe benefits tax is reminding you as well. And a few other components there. And also we'll be sending stuff out, as I said. White papers, help. Okay, any questions of what we've done? Because this has come to the end of what I have to present. Okay, Morgan will be forwarding that information through, Karina. She'll send with links. Very shortly, Regan, we'll be sending them out. It's actually recording at the moment, and it's just a matter of packaging it and making it available today or Monday. Yes, yesterday's was recorded. And also, just remember, there's also YouTube videos that I did last year, which take you through various sections of what we've gone through in one big sweep. So you'll be able to get to that as well. The STP update option will override previous submissions, because that is the final submission. Each submission that you send to the ATO does override the previous with year-to-date figures at that time. If you want to check what you're going to be sending to the ATO as the final thing, do an update submission, and then you can have a look through that. Oh, yesterday, Lisa, yesterday was actually the same thing, but for EXO Payroll, which is our other payroll package that we actually provide. Some clients are running both software. All right, anything else from anybody? Yes, Kim, everything's been recorded. And if you want to give feedback on how it went using Teams this time, rather than WebEx, by all means, feel free. I've done it a couple of different ways over the last couple of years. So if you remember back to the last few, by all means, give your feedback of which way you found has been more efficient. Okay, thank you, everybody, and see you on the other side doing support or implementations in the future.